Okay, so I believe that the Snyderverse, you had a huge impact on the Snyderverse.
Me?
Yeah, you did. John Fiorella, who did Grayson like in 2004. Like, well, that's when it was. That's when I saw that, noticed that Grayson was released.
Yeah, that's when it came out.
Dude, welcome to the Film Threat Podcast.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, cool. Here is our little show intro. Let's get into this conversation.
Let's do it.
John Fiorella, you did I hesitate to even call it a fan film because there are fan films you go, that's a fan film. But the quality of what you did in 2004, before traditional like digital effects kind of took over, you made a 16 millimeter fan film called Grayson that, in my mind, between yourself and Sandy Colera's Batman Dead End, I would say that the influences of those two things clearly had an impact on Zack Snyder. Do you get people? Am I the only one giving you credit, or have other people said those things?
I would like to think so. Influencing Zack Snyder? That's kind. That's very kind. But I doubt it. I mean, that guy was doing amazing things way before Grayson, so I'll take that pat on the back, but I'm not.
Okay, and for those that don't know, I'm speaking to the audience right here. You need to look up Grayson. Just look up Grayson fan film 2004, whatever, or John Fiorella's name, or Untamed Cinema, which is your company, and find this and watch it. Then come back and listen to this or watch this conversation here on YouTube. I can't tell you how many times I've watched it or introduced people to it and said, how have you not heard of one of the greatest quote fan films ever made that teased at such a rich storyline? It's 5 minutes, and it's 5 minutes that's fast. I mean, dude, first of all, where did this project come from? Right? Because God, when you leap in to do a fan film, and let's look at like DC back in 2004, they weren't doing much, right?
No. Yeah, I mean, the influence really, it goes back. If you've been in this town, all you hear is, you hear a constant critique of people of what they love, or specifically what they hate about your ideas. So after just constantly hearing, this is a terrible idea, this is a terrible idea, I had to just set out to prove these people wrong. So that was really, and I mean, it comes from a place of love. I loved Robin as a kid. I come from a family with a lot of cousins. So whenever we played Super Friends, I was always, kicked down to Robin. So to me, he was this awesome superhero that, despite not having the street cred, I always thought there was this great Batman story to tell through this character, Robin. So really, that's, and every couple years of trying and going meeting with studio executives over and over and over again and pitching ideas and not getting projects off the ground, it was really, me and Gabe Sabloff, we would every 2 or 3 years just lose our minds if we didn't do something creative. So for me, this was an outlet for me to just say, here's an idea I have that you all don't think will work. Let me show you that it can work with a handful of credit cards and a roll of duct tape.
Well, it's interesting because I happen to know, I don't know if you and I, if I spoke to you or I watched a bunch of the behind the scenes that you've posted on YouTube of how you made it, but there's so many practical effects. One of my favorite ones is where Robin is being shot with a machine gun, right? And you're holding something to shield, and it literally, you just had firecrackers that you put on the, and also you employed look, the editing on this trailer, this extended trailer build such a world, but you cut away quickly enough that you don't realize probably how cheaply some of the effects were done. Like,
oh yeah. Yeah.
Or even we don't have time to like when Robin comes in, he's battered and beaten, and he kind of like cowers against like what you presume is the Batmobile, and all you used were just some vinyl tape on the car. That was it. And I mean, to me, the things that you did were very similar to how George Lucas made the first Star Wars. And kudos to Marsha Lucas, who edited that film. Because the early cuts were this Star Wars was garbage. I mean, that was what people were saying was a terrible. And then her deft cutting and just you see it enough that your imagination fills it in. But you've mentioned that you actually have the story for this. I feel like what a great entryway or a new entryway into the DC universe to actually tell the story through the perspective of one of the few humans in that universe, Robin.
Oh my God. I would kill to tell that story. In fact, it's the fastest screenplay I ever wrote because I shot the short, the trailer, and then I was just jotting down ideas one night. And the next morning I had like a 52-page outline of the story. And I was like, if I just add, a paragraph to every section here, I'll have a full screenplay. So literally within 3 days, which again is not how I normally, if you talk to anybody who works with me, they'll tell you, oh my God, laboring over, am I strong or significantly, dude, just thesaurus master, right? Just so even now, the details, it's all about the details. But anyways, I wrote Grayson in lickety split time, and I'm pretty happy with the story. I mean, I'm obviously pulling from the greatest comic books and graphic novels of all time, but I feel like I'm telling my own original story that if you were an audience member, you would have no idea which direction the story was going to go. And to me, that's important. That's what makes movies memorable and great.
Speaking of memorable, everyone from Film Threat, when you get together, we would get together for these meetings and, go over like what cool stuff we've seen. I can't tell you, we would just play Grayson over and over to the point where like we're quoting it, right? Like I watch it out of the equation, like it's like you're preparing for a war. Like there's so many good quotable lines from it. And we would even do that one shot, like
everything acted in slow motion because our Bolex would only go so slow. So all through film school, that's just
exactly.
Recently working in HD and being like, oh yeah, do you want to slow this down 500 times? I'm just like, my mind. I'm like, wait, I naturally want to do everything in slow. So it's wild. It's wild.
Well, I mean, it's something that resurfaces. I'm just wondering if, either Zack Snyder clearly had to be aware of it as well as the Sandy's Batman Dead End but maybe it was also kind of a reflection of Frank Miller's, The Dark Knight, which Dark Knight Returns. It's that comic book to me made me love comics again. I was a Batman fan growing up as a kid from Adam West Batman. I liked the Michael Keaton 1989 Batman. I kind of didn't like it because actually, if you look back, the hero's journey is the Joker. It's not Bruce Wayne. They kind of tack on his origin at the end, which I thought was stupid. And they kind of tease you at the beginning. You think you're seeing Batman's origin. You're not. And then Jack Napier is somehow, he follows all the hero's journey stuff is the Joker. And I remember like getting in arguments with my friends at comic shops, like, Batman 89 was not. Now, what was great about that movie was Michael Keaton.
Sure. Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Yeah. And listen, I share your same opinion. In fact, some of my best friends, we bonded over being like, did you like Batman? And us admitting, no, so many problems. 2 Prince songs? Come on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, and you know, Jack Nicholson's performance is great in that. So he's great as the Joker. Production design, he kind of you saw the Frank Miller influence a little bit in the sense that it was a dark telling.
Totally.
But it would get us to where I feel like those comic books, because I would just reread both Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns just to renew my faith. It's like, oh my God, this is what the medium can do.
Oh my God. Yeah. And no doubt. No doubt. I mean, and that's probably why it was such a disappointment for me. I'll never forget when that trailer came on in the movie theater. I mean, again, before the internet, you little whippersnappers. And I was just like, wait, what? There's a Batman movie and it's amazing. And so then that hype, it couldn't fulfill what I had envisioned in my brain, story wise.
Right.
I mean, it looked beautiful, but it just wasn't where I was going to go.
And you remember that summer, everyone had that Batman shirt.
Oh my God, dude. I still have mine. I had to cut the sleeves off so I still fit in it. But yeah, very dear to my heart.
Well, there's a couple things. One, I want to get to what your thoughts are on the Snyderverse, you know, Man of Steel, BVS. And now I assume you've seen Justice League on HBO Max.
Of course.
I love Justice League. I like Snyder's. I feel like, I mean, I probably still would have cut out like maybe a half an hour.
Sure.
Oh my God, if they released that film in 2017, they would have just beaten Marvel to the punch, because the DC unit it feels like more layered, whereas Marvel just seems and now Marvel's just sort of steeped in like, let's throw in agenda over story, which is a whole other conversation. But I just love the Snyder Cut. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, I mean,
the Snyder Cut. I'm going to put you full speed. I want to hear every word.
For me, the Marvel universe, the tone it's perfect. I mean, whatever you have issues with, whatever the characters, but the tone, it's the perfect tone of fun and drama. For me, that's the goal. Always striving for the perfect tone. DC misses that mark for me. And again, I'm not knocking Zack Snyder, because I think Watchmen is the greatest comic book put to the screen, hands down, ever. In fact, I would say it's an improvement. Oh, did I say that out loud? Yeah, it's an improvement on the actual graphic novel, because the ending, I mean, it's masterful. It's masterful. However, I think the Justice League movie, the tone it doesn't touch me here. I never really was all that emotionally invested. It's very beautiful. It's a lot of really cool moments. But I also, I come from the school of The Empire Strikes Back. If you can't tell a movie, a story in under 2 hours, something's wrong. I mean, unless you're doing The Godfather, 4 hours, it's just, at some point it becomes, I don't want to have to watch this. I need to watch that. And that's weird for my movie loving senses.
Well, I agree. I guess what I like most about the Snyder Cut is the tone. I feel like he really nailed a vision for these characters. He should be giving credit for Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, right? Having been in BVS, and kind of he teed it up and set everything up where it could have been this growing universe. And what he was setting up, having watched a lot of interviews with Zack Snyder about what he was intending to tell a Justice League trilogy, which would have splintered off. I mean, even Cyborg, totally. Right? I mean, Cyborg, so much more interesting as a character, but maybe this is where long form storytelling lives, right? Like I've always felt that Watchmen should have been a 12 episode HBO series with each episode being a 1 hour. Every episode could have been one issue of the comic, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and to the credit of Watchmen, that TV show is and even a step up above the movie. I thought the TV show was amazing.
Well, I like that the TV show's like it's a sequel to the comic. It's not a sequel to the Zack Snyder movie. It's actually a sequel to the comic book. Sure. So I like a lot of what it was trying to do and actually show a realistic vision of. I mean, he could have actually just made that into a graphic novel. It seems like something Alan Moore would have done.
Right. But, yeah.
But I'm just blown away that I have certain playlists on YouTube, and Grayson's in a playlist that I return to. I probably watch, it minimally a couple times a year, if not more, like since I discovered it. And what I love is turning people on, a new generation of people, to this film. So when you decide to do this, you're like, yeah, and I'm going to play Robin, and like, what was the course of? And I know people can look at like behind the scenes. I'll post, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll post links in the description so you can see Grayson and also the making of, because you did this mini documentary. The fact that you shot it in a Bolex, I mean, I used a Bolex in college. It's a wind up where you get, what's the maximum? Is it 40 seconds, if I recall correctly, around?
Oh my God. I don't even remember, especially because we shot a lot in slow-mo. So, but you barely get anything.
I don't even think you get a minute. So you wind it up. You've got like 3 minutes of film stock.
Yep.
16 millimeter, depending on your casing, though, you can have more. It's I had a wind up Bolex, and then you crank
it up, super loud. I mean, it's funny because in my head, that's how I know the camera's rolling. Again, me adjusting to modern times, I'm like, there's no sound. What? Okay.
You don't need a slate. You can hear the zzz. I mean, God, you had to put that in a big like blimp, to like basically make it so you could record sound, which is sort of pointless. But the way you did it, and the sound design and the music, I'm sure I know that, but who did the music?
Oh, well, the music we thieved from 20 of the greatest composers of all time. So you've got Matrix Reloaded and all these great things into Grayson. I mean, again, it's still, you have to edit to work with the picture, which, again, it all comes down to editing. So we're talking about Star Wars or Grayson. I mean, that's where the magic happens, I think. I mean, it's the make or break, for a piece.
Right. Well, I'm just, I really hope that people rediscover Grayson.
Dude, I love your enthusiasm for it. I mean, I have a stack of fan mail that I've kept over the years of people, because this came out before YouTube. So in order for people to watch it, they had to download. It could take some people 3 hours to download this 5-minute clip. And, your email is in there as this, dude, this is amazing. What the hell? So it was inspiring. It was inspiring to get that kind of feedback from nerds who live this stuff.
Well, how did people react to it? Because I remember fan films were blowing up in the 90s at San Diego Comic-Con and even in the early 2000s. There were so many other fan films, right? There was Kevin Rubio's Troops. I remember when that premiered, and after people saw it, I remember someone screaming, "Play it again! Play it again!"
Oh, totally.
Comic-Con in a big room. He wasn't there was Batman Dead End, and there were others and fan films, because the studios, think of the late 90s, right? Where were DC and Marvel in the late 90s?
Oh, no. Dude, I mean it's funny because I've never met Sandy Collara. I hope to someday. I enjoyed his film. He beat me to the punch, and I don't know who he ticked off or what transpired after he premiered at the Comic-Con. But the following year, Grayson was going to have this huge screening at the Comic-Con, and literally, so we made up these posters for it. We were super pumped. It's like, this is it. This is what we did all this for. And days before the Comic-Con kicked off, we got an email saying the studios are closing the door on this, and you can't show it, you can't screen it, you can't anything at the Comic-Con. In part because of some kind of reaction to Sandy's Dead End on the studio level. I mean, all I can imagine is that it somehow did they feel threatened by it? I don't know, because to me now there's this huge warm embrace for fan films, which I feel like the studios know that by having fans create their own stories and vision, they're just, you know, promoting these characters and the love for the big movies that they're going to release.
I first of all, I was there that year. I remember, and there were some other filmmakers, you know, aside from yourself, that had fan films, and they ended up doing screenings at bars in the Gaslamp in San Diego. And it was, there's of course the Real Spider-Man, which you know about, right? I'm sure, like, there were so many of these, and I think it was an embarrassment for the studios, because if you think about it, that their studio executives could not get it together.
Oh, right.
To put the pieces of the puzzle together with their, you know, intellectual property and creatives, right? I mean, there was the long, you know, James Cameron was supposed to make a Spider-Man movie forever. I mean, that project was rumored since the 90s, if I recall.
I know.
No, it was the 80s, because it was going to come
earlier,
from films. And I remember getting a copy of Variety, and they had like the back of it had like Spider-Man from James Cameron. Like,
oh, jeez.
Yeah. So,
I mean, it's a different time. It's sad because, well, I guess it's good, because now I feel like we're at this place where they recognize that it's all going to be money in their pocket in the long run. You know, I didn't particularly profit from Grayson or try to sell it, but I mean, look, the big dream is that someday I get to commit that story to film. I mean, would there be a better champion story for the fan filmmakers of the world if Grayson got the funding to do a what if, an Elseworld of story in this universe? I mean, one can dream. You would think, but I think, you know, while I like you, like I love the Marvel films, but I feel like after, you know, after Endgame, I just find myself not caring. I feel like that was an era. They told that story. I think the characters that I cared about are gone. I think that Marvel is going to vastly underestimate how popular the male characters are that are now sort of being weeded out little by little with the future of Marvel. And because I feel like, here's the thing is, I feel like Marvel came to prominence with a lot of these characters because they were just as popular with, you know, female moviegoers as male moviegoers, because there was that trope of the shirtless male character. Even on our Film Threat YouTube channel, we did these montages of every time a guy in a Marvel movie was shirtless. There's like a couple of compilation videos, and it's a Marvel trope. If you're a man, you're going to be in Marvel. You're taking your shirt off. You know, you're going topless. Well, look,
topless Avengers.
You gotta love that. It all goes back to Captain Kirk. You know,
right?
I mean,
Kirk, he'd always get his shirt ripped, and but look, it's like, look, and you know, I had a friend years ago that just said, look, the first Avengers movie is like a Chippendales show with these like these hot men, and I feel that Marvel is vastly underestimating how popular these strong male leads are with women. With female audiences, female moviegoers. They're certainly popular with men, right? But I feel like women like that also. So we'll see what happens with this next Marvel phase. I'm not particularly optimistic. I was not a fan of Black Widow for a number of reasons. I feel that movie kind of got screwed though by everything that's happened in the last, you know, 18 months, whatever. But you know, I'm, you know, like, I know you want to make this story. What if you did like pulled an Alan Moore, right? Like Watchmen was originally, circle back to Watchmen. Watchmen was originally going to be DC characters.
Sure.
Could have been in Elseworlds, and I would have loved to have seen that, right? Would have loved to have seen a more adult take on these characters, which is what Zack Snyder was attempting to do.
Right.
Could you do that? Could you tell the story and just change it to Jaybird or whatever? You know what I mean? I know it's not real appealing, but you could do it. Remember that series that Alan Moore did? What was it called? 1963. He did that limited series. Look it up.
I'll check it out. Check it out.
He did this limited series called 1963, and it was sort of a parody. It was sort of an ode to, and it even had like fake ads in it. It was like an ode to those comics of the early 60s. There's even like a Fantastic Four kind of ripoff in there where he was trying to tell different stories with those characters.
Oh, that's cool.
Never would have been able. Look up 1963.
All right,
I think you'll dig it. This is my comic book nerd cred, which is,
I love it.
I know this much of comic books, but the stuff that I've retained, I really love. But like,
sure.
You're such a talent as a filmmaker. What's stopping you from doing a feature that uses, it's not a Robin movie, but it's something else? It's
if you know, like for too long, I really tried to. Everything I was writing was $100 million budget script. So even when I was getting in those rooms, I didn't have the street cred to have an executive go, oh, okay, this guy can run a $80 million show.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
You got meetings from Grayson.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Can you tell me the meetings?
Oh my God.
Okay, tell me the story of these meetings. You met with studio executives at Warner Brothers or DC?
No, that was the only place I couldn't get into.
Where did you meet? Where did you meet?
Like Dark Horse Entertainment, which was an awesome opportunity that kind of just crumbled apart because of, industry stupidity, really. But, there's so many stories to tell. I don't know. Where do you want me to start?
Well, I want to hear if you got in a serious room with someone who could have said yes, because I've had those dumb meetings too. Then you realize that all you're doing in these meetings is you're meeting people that are at a much lower level that you got to get through all the screens to their boss, to the decision maker. So you basically end up wasting time. I mean, that's why I finally was like, produced my first feature. I just said, I'm tired of pitching to people that are pointless. And I did get in the big rooms with people who could have like bought my script for $1 million, right? Like I could have done that. And then I just realized like the politics of this is just people giving jobs to their friends.
Well, I mean, the politics of it all is what killed my Dark Horse deal. So here's Dark Horse in a nutshell. I go to Dark Horse, which I'm super ecstatic about, right? And I go in there, I walk in the room. The room's filled with suits and some cool people, and Mike Richardson, who is the owner of that place. And they're like, "You're a star." And that first was like, am I like some hottie that just stepped off the bus? What's happening here? Anyways, long story short, Fiorella, we're going to give you $1 million picture, whatever you want to do. I'm like, this is awesome. So literally the next day, because I was hot, man. I was hot filmmaker. I had this meeting with these guys that were going to make this rock movie with The Rock. What's that video game? Spy, the 80s video game with the truck and the Spy Hunter. Anyways.
Probably Spy Hunter.
Yes. So I meet these guys and they're like, Dark Horse is going to give you $1 million. We'll give you $5 million. I'm like, even better. Let's do this. So I call up my manager, who was this heavyweight at CAA and one of the founders there. And I said, dude, these guys are going to give me $5 million. Let's, I love Dark Horse, but let's make this happen. He goes, okay, I'll call them. He calls them, calls me back, says, hey, you know what? These guys aren't legit. We spoke for about an hour. I get the vibe that they don't really have money, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, shucks, that's too bad. So the next day I call those guys and I say, hey, I'm sorry, we're not going to do this. I heard you talk to my manager. They're like, he never called us. What are you talking about? So I was like, what? So then I was so angry. I was working at a Lamps Plus in Torrance, right? So I'm literally on the phone. I've got this torchire in the other hand that I'm trying to sell. And I'm like, dude, you just lied to me? I mean, you're a shark. You're swimming with the sharks. You can lie to whoever, but you're lying to me? So I fired him.
Well,
dumb.
you mean people in the entertainment industry are full of shit?
Oh, yes, but
guessed?
this guy's
Who would've
representing me,
guessed
and he
you're
was
full of
just he
shit?
totally made up a conversation. It blew my mind. So, anyways, I called Dark Horse up, and the head of CAA was the best friends of Mike Richardson. So they're like, "Hey, this deal's done. We're not doing business with you. You're clearly crazy." So then I call up the guys, the $5 million deal. They're like, "Oh, Dark Horse is out. Oh, we're out." And within 24 hours, I was back to just selling lamps.
This is
Yeah,
why I have remained solidly in indie film, because I find most people in this industry have more
yeah.
integrity, and it's also you're more in control of
Oh,
your own destiny, because I
right.
don't. I mean, just people are just so full of shit in Hollywood that I've just learned that, like, okay, indie film, you're still going to find a percentage of people that are full of shit. It's far less. And
Oh,
also,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
at the end of the day, you're in control of your own destiny.
Right.
And you can raise money and you can do it for whatever you want. Grayson is a great example of this. It's a perfect example of, you did this. No one hired you to do it. You hired yourself. You decided to write this script. The only thing against you is you wrote an amazing story for something you don't own.
Exactly.
While it displays
Exactly.
your filmmaking and acting chops.
Here's another Grayson story that I think you'll find interesting, because it led to what I'll share with you here. And ultimately, it involves another property that I don't own. I know you're a big Star Wars nut. I mean, we share that love. It's why I'm here. George Lucas. I mean, the idea that you could simultaneously be producing The Empire Strikes and Raiders of the Lost Ark at the same time. I mean, is there a greater filmmaker out there? I say no. Despite the prequels and the new movies, I mean, Lucas is why I'm who I am. So, because I was not very happy with the prequels, I did what every Star Wars nerd would do, is I started outlining my own prequels for no apparent reason. And then one day I said, wait, why am I doing this? Why don't I write down something that I can actually make? So I had this idea. My idea was, why don't I make Star Wars Episode 7? And I do it the unlicensed version, just like Irving Kershner, who directed The Empire Strikes Back, and he got Sean Connery to make a James Bond film that wasn't recognized by the franchise. Right. So I went to this producer at the time I was talking to, and I said, look, if I could get Mark Hamill and basically do Unforgiven in space, and did it without using any copyrighted stuff, how much money would you throw at this project? And he said, well, let me see the script. So I said, well, I'm not going to write the whole script. So that night I wrote 10 pages. I sent it to him in the morning. He called me up. He's like, this is awesome. He's like, I'll commit $6 million for you. If you can get Mark Hamill, you can make this project. So for me, $6 million, I can do 90 minutes of Star Wars. So I put this package together. I put it in the mail. I zip it off to Mark Hamill. I don't even know if it's his real address. I send it off. I hear nothing for a month. And then it's Saturday. My phone's ringing. It rings a couple times. And I'm like, the credit card dealers, leave me alone. I'm feeding yogurt to my daughter. She was tiny. I check my messages. It's Mark Hamill. He's like, hey, John, this is Mark Hamill. My brain's like, what? Yeah, seriously, dude. So I call him back, and we proceed to have 90 minutes of the best conversation I've ever had in my entire life. First of all, when you meet a hero and they're awesome, they exceed your expectation, that in itself, it's just...
That's rare.
It touches you, right?
Yeah.
But he had seen Grayson. He told me about when he first saw it, which was so cool. And then we started talking about this project and how much he wanted to be Luke Skywalker, and would he have the beard like Ben Kenobi and all this. And I was like, well, we won't use lightsabers, but we'll have a metal sword that will be in the coals, and when it comes out, it'll be glowing red, and all these clever ways to give people Star Wars without infringing on the rights. And Mark loved it, except he's a genuine Jedi and was like, I would do this if it didn't crush George, and it will destroy my relationship with George. And he built this whole thing, and I can't do that, which I completely respect and understand. But it was the coolest thing.
I bet Mark Hamill would do it now. I bet he would do it now.
Yeah, I mean,
I had all faith. Like, I hadn't seen Luke Skywalker on screen, in 30 years, 30 plus, whatever. I know people like to shit on The Last Jedi. Just seeing Luke Skywalker, and I had faith, especially when they titled the movie Rise of Skywalker. I thought, oh, it's going to be a Christ story. He's coming back from the spirit realm, and he's bringing reinforcements, and it's going to be this badass thing. And then Rise of Skywalker ended up being not just the worst Star Wars movie ever made, the biggest disappointment in cinematic history, and the fact that I did a video on another YouTube channel about this already, so I'm not going to rant too much.
I saw it. I totally agreed with what you're saying.
The fact that you can't put the three main people together. So to me, a lot of people like to blame Last Jedi for the
no, it starts in episode 7.
Episode 7, Rise of Skywalker shit the bed. Last Jedi got me interested. I was like, well, they can fix this. I felt like I knew I could connect the dots. I'll send you this other video I did, because I was like, why did they rush out this Solo movie? Why did it have to come out? And I thought the reason it had to come out is I kind of was connecting dots. Like, I was thinking there was way more depth to what I was seeing than what actually was there. I'll send it to you. It's called Franchise Forecast. I did what I thought episode 9 was going to be.
Oh, cool.
And I had worked out, like, this is going to save the franchise and it's going to be awesome. And the Colin Trevorrow thing sounds like it would have been way better. But what's so funny is, in retrospect, the Star Wars prequels have aged better with time, and the sequels, they've aged better. I'm not saying they're still great, but things where you got to objectively look and just go back and go, that's a badass scene. Or like episode 1, there's something about the innocence in parts of that were cool. I thought it was not, a lot of things were not well worked out. Like, I'm sure you've read the book, The Secret History of Star Wars.
Sure.
One of my favorite interesting facts from that is that George Lucas thought that the audience would never believe that you would kill the main hero, Luke Skywalker, in The Empire Strikes Back. Audiences aren't going to believe that. So he didn't make the lightsaber duel with Vader about, killing Luke. It was about, could Luke turn to the dark side? And he thought he could convince audiences of that. And that was what the conflict was about. Not who won that lightsaber duel. It was Darth Vader could turn Luke toward evil. And that was so smart of Lucas. And the fact that he consulted with a child psychologist about the effects of, like, what if I make the main villain the hero's father? Like, will that affect kids? And that J.J. Abrams, I think J.J. Abrams is a fraud and a hack. It's very clear now he should never.
I mean, dude, come on, Mission Impossible 3, that's tight. I mean, the direction.
Not a franchise I care about. But the first Star Trek movie he made was like, oh, this is cool. You made Star Trek mainstream to people who don't care about Star Trek. But making the engineering a Budweiser plant was pretty stupid, in my opinion.
I'm with you there, but I mean, all those characters in the Star Trek movie have something to do in the plot. You can't say that about the last Star Wars movie, or
the last Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah,
to me it's
sad. It's funny because so I had all this internal baggage going into episode 7, and I was so happy. I mean, literally, it was about 2 or 3 months after Mark and I had our phone call that news broke that they were going to make a new Star Wars with Mark Hamill. I was so happy for him, because
this is like 2012, 2011 around. When was that announced? It's like 2011, 2012. But okay, so you mentioned Unforgiven. Can you tell me what the story
the first 10 pages are on my website. So if you go to untamedcinema.com, go into the blog, there's a whole, I list the whole my letter to him and the first 10 pages of the script. So you can read it, check it out. surprisingly, there's some little nuggets of it. It feels like it's in other Star Wars stuff, but I mean, we all have similar ideas on some way. I mean, everything I attack is from a no budget perspective,
Right.
So if I have a monster, it's got to be in a cave, and we'll have the tentacles come out of the cave, but no, we don't see the actual monster.
You mean like in Star Wars, they did that mainly because they didn't have money. A lot of the things,
right.
And the fact that the lightsaber is just a Graflex tube, which is a piece of photographic equipment
right.
that they just sort of glued some things on. It's amazing how homemade the first Star Wars was.
Truly.
But a lot of it based on, at least it was so forward thinking. I love the recent thing that George Lucas talked about, where he said the only racism in space was against droids. And the fact that makes sense in light of what the Clone Wars ended up becoming was clones versus robots. I mean, that's, so it makes sense that later in the galaxy that like there would be this disdain towards mechanized life forms, right?
Right.
So untamedcinema.com has not just the first 10 pages of this. You mentioned Unforgiven, and I think, oh my God, that's so brilliant, because at its heart, Star Wars is a Western, right? Like,
totally.
We all know this.
Yeah, I mean, look, so I see episode 7 in the theater, and I cry. I'm crying because I just feel gutted. Like, I feel robbed. I was like, oh, this is J.J. Abrams and all the money in the world and all the characters are here, but I hate this. It hurt me. It really, in fact, I saw it in the morning, went to work, and I did nothing for 10 hours. I just sat there and tried not to, curse, because I was so flustered at what happened. And then, this episode 8 came out, and I love the director, and he's taking chances, but it felt like a total off the path. It still felt like there was no plan for anything.
We know it. We know now that there was no plan.
Yes.
If you're in the map, at least get the beats of what, and to me, Finn was a character that I found the most interesting, and he was the most wasted character.
Dude, die on screen. I'm going to actually feel something. And he doesn't even die. Come on. So, no. And then the 9th movie comes out, and about halfway through, I had an epiphany, because my lady, I don't know how we ended up together, because she's completely, how do I say it? She's like Star Wars challenged. She's like, which one has the puppet? I'm like, no, grounds for separation. But so about an hour into episode 9, I was like, this is what it feels like to have just blinders on, don't care about Star Wars, because it happened to me. I couldn't wait to get out of the theater. I was like, and then I was like, how is this really happening? How are all these flawed story elements in one screenplay with all these talented filmmakers and actors and people behind the scenes, and no one's like, this is going to be bad. What are we doing? So, but let's put it this way. The Mandalorian, I mean, again, that whole thing was, well, you're not going to feel like a child again watching Star Wars. Yeah, The Mandalorian. Dude, the first episode, I was like, wow, I love you. Yeah. So,
well, it felt more real in tone. And you know that Jon Favreau was originally one of the directors that they went to for episode 7. And I guarantee you that had he done episode 7, look back. Oh, I remember just because, Favreau comes from indie film.
Yeah.
Comes from indie film from way back in the day. And I know he knows Film Threat just because he's been in it like back in the 90s when he was, an indie film guy. And I still feel like anyone that comes from indie film still has indie film roots. George Lucas is the most successful indie filmmaker of all time, and hated Hollywood so much he moved away. He'll use their money.
It's true.
he's an indie guy. And so this is why I kind of feel like corporations cannot do justice to these franchises, whether it's Terminator or Star Trek or any of this. If you get a major film franchise, you will fuck it up because you're going to put people in charge that care more about their corporate well-being and stature than they do about nerd stuff that you and I could talk about for hours.
It's true.
I mean, it gets me angry when I just think about the hiring the wrong people in these positions, whether it's the gatekeepers that hire the people or whether it's even the people at the smallest positions. They are hiring corporate climbers and not actual people with nerd cred who can sit there and talk on and on about, like, you know, all this stuff. But
I mean, dude, you see it everywhere, even in the marketing, like the posters. I know it's another team of people, but like, whose studio nephew is making these posters for these movies? I mean, for me, the poster, I mean, because we come from a time before the internet where the poster, that's what you had to get you in, to tell you the story, to put, you know. And now it's like, let's do 30 headshot character posters. I don't mind that for something like Dune, because Dune's not a household name, but those solo posters. Remember when they came out with those solo posters and it was a total ripoff of some line of jazz CDs? Yes,
and it was just completely ripped off,
stolen. Sad.
They not only phoned in every aspect of this. Because you know, it's unconscionable what they did, and it shows
it's mind-numbing. It's mind-numbing because I want to make you studio executives lots of money. Just let me do that for you. But somehow there's always another, you know, cook that's like, well, that would be great, but let's put her on a different planet. Like, what's happening?
Lame. Well, look, that's why, actually, you know what? The next thing to look forward to, I mean, one, Dune, I can't wait for. I cannot wait for Dune.
It looks exciting.
I'm looking forward to, I bet Avatar could be really good. The next two Avatar movies could be really good. It's original vision, James Cameron. I mean, Avatar, the first Avatar movie is Dune. It effectively is the same hero's journey and in many of the same details. Instead of conquering the worm, it's conquering the dragon. It's an outsider coming to the frontier and being integrated into the local culture. It's so the storyline of Dune. It's the internet generally gets that shit wrong because they don't know the deeper themes, right? So they're like, you know, it's Rainbow Forest or whatever that was. It's like, no, Avatar is Dune. And I know for a fact that when Paramount was developing Dune as a movie, that Avatar coming out and being successful kind of like derailed their plans. Or like, the movies are way too similar. So we'll see with Denis Villeneuve. But I think the next Avatars could be really good. John, I have to have you. Unfortunately, I got to run to another podcast.
It's all good.
I got to have you on. Well, before you go, though, you can go to untamedcinema.com. John Fiorella has a Kickstarter that's ending very soon. Tell me, before we end this, tell me about the Kickstarter.
It's called Ditch. It's a comic book come to life with zany characters, awesome action, plot twists, and cliffhangers at the end of every episode. I mean, the goal with Ditch is to somehow reach in and recreate that awesome moment where you're lying on your mom's shed carpeting and you pull, you know, you get to the last panel of that comic book and your mind goes, that's what Ditch is. And I'm excited to share it with the planet. If everyone could somehow head on over to Kickstarter, type in Ditch, and just throw $1 to the cause, I'll get this out to you guys.
Well, I'm going to give you money for your Kickstarter. I donate to Kickstarters all the time.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
So I'm in with that.
All right.
We'll put the link in the description. So send me all the links you want on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, look under here. There's a link to the Ditch Kickstarter in there. And John, this is not the last time you're doing the podcast.
Yeah, dude, we got to nerd some more or catch a film. You're in the town, so let's do that.
Yeah, like I'm in Pasadena. I used to be walking distance to several theaters, but some are closed now.
Sweet.
But
we'll make it happen.
Yeah, we should make that happen. And then also maybe a watch party or something, just like you being a creative force is something that's needed in this industry. And I feel like we have to I feel like the creatives that are the true indie and geek spirit have to now make this stuff. as my friend Gary Beekler from Nerdrotic and others say. So there you go.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for doing the Film Podcast, John.
Pleasure really finally connecting with you. So,
dude, yeah, no, it's been too long. Thank you so much. Take care, John.
All right, man. See you.